crimes, quote, calculated and carefully planned. In our new investigative series, Crime Without Punishment, CBS News is taking a look at the rise of unsolved murders in America. The report finds a gap in the arrest rate for cases with white victims versus Black or Hispanic victims. Jim Axelrod reports from Philadelphia.
This is going to happen pretty fast once they get out. They'll jump out there. Yeah.
Detectives from Philadelphia's homicide unit, along with a SWAT team, are raiding a house where they believe a murder suspect is holed up. On this morning, the raid is successful.
Yeah, we have 2 suspects in custody.
But these detectives spend each day confronting a troubling question. Why do so many murders now go unsolved?
For us, it's the volume.
562 homicides were committed in Philadelphia last year. That's about 11 each week. More than half of those cases are still open.
It's the number of murders, and we just keep going and going and going. It's just, the volume just comes in and it just crushes you.
In the 1960s, police solved 8 out of every 10 murder cases in America. Today, it's barely 1 in 2.
It has never been this bad. During the last 7 months of 2020, most murders went unsolved, and that's never happened before in America.
What chiefs nationwide told us hinders murder investigations most, the breakdown between police and communities of color in a post-George Floyd world. Our investigative data team analyzed unsolved murders across the country. The rate of arrests over the last 30 years when the victim is white has risen above 85%. Watch how the rate declines when the victim is Hispanic. And even fewer arrests are made when the victim is Black.
The disparity is stunning.
It is stunning. It's not just here. It's not just here.
Danielle Outlaw is the commissioner of the Philadelphia Police Department. She says police need the community's help, but knows it must be earned.
Are Black murders pursued as aggressively?
Yes.
As urgently?
Yes.
With the same amount of manpower?
Yes. Yes. Again, it's across.
So then why do you end up with this kind of disparity?
I think it's obvious. I'm a Black woman. What we need is a collaborative effort in solving these cases.
Sometimes it sounds like what's implicit is that the community of color needs to trust the police more.
No, not at all. We're talking about historically issues, systemic inequities that contribute to the mistrust. It has to be a two-way street.
Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Philadelphia.
We're going to go deeper with CBS News investigative data journalist Christopher Hacker, who's joining us now. Christopher, this is such an interesting piece, and we heard that police are only solving about half of the murders in the U.S., the lowest rate ever recorded. Why is this happening?
So in 1960, which is the first year the data was available from the FBI, the police reported solving more than 8 in 10 cases. But policing and data collection has, changed a lot since then. But even through the 1980s, it was still 7 out of 10 homicides. Then when murders spiked in the 1990s to even higher levels than they did in 2020, they were still around 6 out of 10. But in 2020, this was the first year that this national clearance rate fell to just 1 in 2, meaning it's now just a coin toss as to whether a murder is solved.
Well, there's also a major disparity, as we heard, by race in homicide clearance rates. What more can you explain about this?
So it was difficult for us to get reliable national law enforcement clearance data that included race. So we used something called FBI supplemental homicide reports. And that data showed that the clearance rate for white victims has been steadily increasing since the 1990s, while conversely, the clearance rate for Black victims has continued to decline. And there's always been a disparity between the two groups, but in 1995, that difference was just about 10 points. Now in 2020, it's more than double that, a 28-point difference, which means that the homicides of white victims are now about 50% more likely to be solved.
So we're still trying, and this is perhaps going to encourage more people to watch the documentary, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this. Maybe you can tell us more about the result of homicide cases in your city of Chicago.
Yeah, we had some really interesting findings in Chicago, because in this city where I'm based, police don't actually report case clearance data to the FBI at all. That just appears to be completely blank in their data. So we had to actually go to that department and ask them for the data through the Freedom of Information Act. When they sent us that data, I realized that they'd included information that differentiated cases that were cleared because someone was arrested and cases that were cleared for other reasons. These are what police call exceptional clearances, and they're supposed to be very rare, experts have told us. They're supposed to be for cases like when police identify a suspect, but that suspect is dead, for example. But in Chicago in 2021, they made up nearly half of the city's quote-unquote solved murder cases. Now, we don't have enough data to know for certain if this is something that happens in other places at the same rates, because we don't have the data, but if each department used exceptional clearance, even half the rate of the Chicago police, that national solve rate already at 50% could be much, much lower.
So interesting. Chris Hacker, really excited to see the results of all of your work on that